A very good morning to all of you. We begin the Legdom series of this year's December season with the first program by Professor Sriram Parasuram. He is going to provide the demonstration on GAAYAKA and VAADHYA aspects of the violin in the Indian classical music. Please enjoy. Thank you.
எல்லாருக்கும் நமஸ்காரம். Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Today's topic deals with something which is very dear to me, very precious to me. The idea of Indian classical music is that in the past 500 years at least, it has been a vocal tradition. Whatever we sing, we play on an instrument, correct? At least in Carnatic music, we don't have a separate instrumental idiom. In Western classical music, for example, you have pieces that are written for violin or piano or for the oboe or for the viola or the cello, or all the instruments have specific compositions and music written for the soundscape and the capabilities and the potential of that instrument, the range of the instrument. For a piano concerto, it will have the 5-octave range because that is what the piano can realize. A vocal aria or an opera cannot have that range because voice generally will not span. So depending upon the specific strengths and shortcomings of an instrument, music is written. Whereas in Carnatic music, there is no specific music that is written for or composed for an instrument. Whatever we sing, we play on the instrument. Correct? At least in the last 500 years. Before that, we don't know. So that it behooves that the music is predominantly one of the voice. And when Sahitya comes into the picture, the voice becomes pradhana. And so all that instruments are trying to do is to capture the essence of vocal music on a different sound, whether it be a nagaswaram or whether it be a violin or a flute or a gotvadyam or whatever be it. We are trying to capture the music that is predominantly vocal. So the ragas that I played now, Nataka, and then I played Varali, then Hamsadhvani. Let me, before we go into the subject matter, let us come to know a little bit about the violin. It is important to understand what makes the sound of the violin so special and so unique. Every instrument is very unique in terms of its soundscape. நாதஸ்வரம் கேட்டால் அது ரொம்ப யூனிக்காக, ரொம்ப அழகாக, தனியாக அழகாக தெரியும். ஒரு வீணை கேட்டால் தனியாக அழகாக தெரியும். அந்த அழகு தான் தேடி போகிறோம். அதனால தான் பாட்டுனா we have a very wide range of voices which are beautiful. Similarly, every instrument has its own voice. And when we hear வர்ணம் நாட்ட குறிஞ்சியில் வாசித்தோம், அந்த ரசனை, அந்த அழகு ஒரு பாட்டை ஃபாலோ பண்ணுறதுனாலும், even though it follows the vocal idiom, it is very uniquely beautiful. Right? So what is it that makes an instrument sound the way it sounds? The field of sonic and acoustics is a very vast subject. How instruments are crafted, what are the acoustic principles behind an instrument, what are its specific, unique characteristics of sound. That is why the rasana that arises out of a flute rendition is very different from the rasana that arises out of a violin rendition or a nagaswaram rendition, because the ears have the potential to take in everything. So the way you rasify a vocal rendition is actually very different from the way you rasify an instrumental rendition. So we have to understand each instrument. If you are a very keen rasika, you have to understand the principles of why a nagaswaram sounds the way it sounds. Correct? Serious இருந்தா தான். அல்ல சும்மா எல்லாம் காதில் விழுது பாட்டுக்கு போகிறது, அது வேற விஷயம். பட் என்ன இந்த இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்டோட என்ன ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்காக என்னத்தினால எனக்கு பிடிக்கும், ஏன் எனக்கு ஒரு மேண்டோலின் பிடிச்சி வந்தது? There must be some reason other than destiny that you like a mandolin, especially in the hands of a master. Correct? So violin, see, basically there are 4 principles of Vaadhya. You know, there are 4 ways in which an instrument can produce sound. The principles of sound production. One is Avanadha Vaadhya, which is sound through a membrane, like a mridangam or a kanjira, correct? Adhula or membrane na or skin, which can be tightened and relaxed. Adhile indha vara or sound. And the tightness nala or a rhythmic or a kind of a percussive sound that emanates out of it. Then there is the Vaadhya of Sushira. Sushira is when wind is passed through a particular setup, it produces a sound. Like a flute or a nagaswaram or a saxophone or whatever. Then you have Tatavadhya. Tatavadhyas are those where if you hit on them, they produce sound. For example, a ghatam or a morsing, Tatavadhya. Then there is the big family of string instruments, whether it be a veena or whether it be a violin or whether it be a guitar, right? By strumming a string or by activating a vibrating string, you produce music. Correct? So, in the violin has undergone a lot of change in terms of its construction, in terms of its shape and acoustic features and design and etc. The violin is essentially an Indian instrument. Do you know that? Even today we find in certain places in North India where they play an instrument called the Ravanahata. Ravanahata or the Ravanastram was something that Ravana used to regale Shiva with his music. Ravana was supposed to be a very great musician according to our stories. Shivanuku vandu Ravanaoda and the instrument vasikku nama veena solrom Ravana vandu veena vasicha but veena vasikala அவர் appo veena vandittle illa in terms of anthropology I am talking about. Ravanahata was a folk instrument, and that even today you will find it in Rajasthan, Gujarat, 9th century, 10th century relief caves. There is evidence of people playing a bowed instrument like the violin. And of course, this was taken over by when trade routes happen, invasions happen. This instrument traveled to Persia and then on to Europe, where over a period of about 500 years, it evolved through different stages. Viola, the gamba, viola, violin. In the mari evolve ahi around the 1600s, it got crystallized into this particular instrument, which is the violin, right? And then we borrowed it back from them. Nama kuduthu nama thiruppi vaanginum. Yaru vaanginana? Balu Swami Dikshithar in this part of the country found that the military bands were using this instrument, the English military bands. So in the sound romba alaga irukke, nama paatu mariye irukke, idoda sounding, idoda frequency characteristics are very much like the voice. So nama paatu mari idha vasikkalam அவர் first try பண்ணார். Parallelly in Mysore, Veerabhadraya ஒருத்தர் அங்கேயும் ஒரு கேன்டோன்மெண்ட்ல கேட்டு இதை அடாப்ட் பண்ணலாமே அவருக்கும் தோணிருக்கு independently. So இவா ரெண்டுரும் பண்ண அந்த adaptation of the instrument is how we have this happened around 1840s 1850s. During that time Baluswami Dikshithar was Muthuswami Dikshithar's brother. அது நம்மளுக்கெல்லாம் தெரியும். So through a period of evolution of 150 years, this instrument in Carnatic music, it didn't have a similar process in North India. So Hindustani music idu romba late ah vandhudu, right? But Carnatic music la in the instrument pradhaniyam eduthu. It displaced the veena, it displaced the nagaswaram, elladhum displace panniduthu. For one reason, that its sounding was very amenable and very ideal for the aesthetics and for the requirements of Carnatic music. An instrument has to have the potential to produce and reproduce what is being sung. Like I said, in a primarily vocal tradition, that's a requirement for an instrument. That's why I feel that instruments like the piano and the guitar, etc., are not suited. It's a different matter that you might enjoy. Even with U. Srinivasa's mandolin, the mandolin is not suited for Carnatic music. But he was such a master of the instrument, he created the illusion. But actually, strictly speaking, a fretted instrument can never produce the kind of requirements of gamakas and anuswaras and tonal variations and all the aesthetics that Carnatic music requires. This is not an opinion. Many people think it's an opinion. No, it's a fact. Like how, like I cannot run a marathon is a fact. It's not an opinion. I have not trained for it. I'm not physically endowed for it. Correct? Or I will not be good at basketball because I'm not tall enough. It's a fact. So when I say that the mandolin or the piano or the guitar or even the saxophone, these are all aberrations. They are not suited for Carnatic music. Strictly speaking. ஒரு அளவுக்கு வாசிக்கலாம் வாசிக்கலாம் பட் கமக்கெல்லாம் வராது. நம்மளாம் ரசிச்சுட்டு இருக்கோம், அது நம்ம பெரிய தன்மை. நம்ம because we are so தாராள மனசு, we keep rectifying all that. But it's only an aberration. This I'm saying as a matter of fact. I'm not judging anything here. Okay? The primary requirement for an instrument which has to produce Carnatic music is that it has to produce continuous frequency and continuous sound. இப்போ இனி கொஞ்சம் இன்டராக்டிவாக வச்சுக்கலாம். நீங்கள் என்னெல்லாம் ராகம் உங்களுக்கு தெரியுமோ பிடிச்சி வருதோ நீங்கள் சொல்லலாம். யூ கேன் சஜஸ்ட். எப்படி அந்த கமகம், எப்படி அந்த அனுஸ்வரம், எப்படி அந்த கண்டினியூஸ் சவுண்ட், அது வந்தால் தானே அது பாட்டு மாதிரி தெரியும். The requirement of the instrument is that it has to sound like the voice. சாகித்யம் பாடுறது உங்களுக்கு சாகித்யம் மாதிரி தெரியணும். ஒரு கமகம் தோடியில் பாடினா வாசிச்சா அது உங்களுக்கு கமகம் மாதிரி தோடி கமகம் மாதிரி தெரியணும். கமகரி கமதமகரி லைக் அது தெரியணுமே. இப்போ கீபோர்டில் வாசிச்சா அது கா இல்லை. ரீம 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 ரீ அந்த ஸ்வரம் தான் நான் வயலினை வாசிப்பேன். பட் அது கனெக்டடாக இருக்கும். இட் வில் ஹாவ் அ டோனல் கலர் அண்ட் டைமென்ஷன் டு இட். கா மகரி ச நீ சதி கா இப்படி வாசிக்க முடியுதா தான் அது கர்நாடிக் மியூசிக்கு அது பொருத்தம். அப்போதான் தோடியாக இருக்கும். அதுதான் இன்கம்ப்ளீட். Otherwise it is incomplete and not representative of the raga. Because the raga is so complexly beautiful. And the அழகு நம்ம வெளிப்படுத்தணும்னா இந்த கமகம் அனுஸ்வரம் எல்லாம் வரணும். So coming back to the instrument of the violin, why it became the most, I will teach you can learn a word today. Ubiquitous. Ubiquitous means most well accepted and most widespread instrument in the world. You know, every form of music has adapted the violin. Whether it be Egyptian, whether it be Japanese, whether it be Chinese opera, whether it be Arabic, Middle East orchestras, our film music. எல்லாத்துலேயும் இந்த violin it was very readily accepted is because of the potential of the violin to produce every sound under the sun. Every kind of sound under the sun. Every variation of sound. Because music, we are dealing with this big element called sound. Dhwani, nadam, sattam. Sattamum sound da. Sangeetam adil refined varadu. Namak correcta. So or music or aesthetic or soundscape irukku. Correct? Ilayaraja voice na adu or soundscape. Avar paadra raw kind of folk kind of ornaments and embellishments is also sound. ரொம்ப sophisticatedா பாடுற பிருந்தாமாவோட ஒரு பிரிக்காவோ ஒரு சங்கதி அதுவும் சவுண்டு தான். ஸோ இது எல்லாமே நம்மளால ஒரு இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்ல கொண்டு வர முடியும்னா அதுதான். ஸோ the violin is a standing testimony to the fact that it is probably the most versatile and most capable instrument that man has come up with. இன்ஃபேக்ட் ஒரு இடத்துல லால்குடி ஜெயராமன் சார் சொல்லுவார், as a in a lighter moment, நம்ம சரஸ்வதி காடஸ்க்கு அப்போ வயலின் இருந்தால் அவள் வீணை வச்சுட்டு இருக்க மாட்டா, கையில் வயலின் தான் வச்சுட்டு சொல்லுவார். ஒரு தமாஷா. பிகாஸ் the reason why it displaced, I'm not saying displaced in a very bad way. Every instrument has its place. The veena has its place, the pulangudal has its place. The tambura has its place. All of this coexist in our beautiful musical domain. Correct? But why is it that the violin became so widespread within 100 years? In the 1900 to 2000, the way the violin rose in terms of prominence, primarily as an accompaniment instrument. Correct? 1930s we have recordings where the violin pakvade mile ki paate illa. Because the violin's ability to shadow and to produce the same music that the vocalist is able to do. That is the reason. There's a process called natural selection. Natural selection is always based on what works. So the violin as an accompaniment worked. Because it could produce the overtones, the gamakas, etc., that the voice was able to do. The voice is the supreme instrument. There is no doubt about it. Correct? Throughout the world, the urge to sing, the urge to express oneself through sound is through singing, through voice. Every instrument comes only later. So, anda vidathila, violin was so readily accepted. That's why I always commend the broad-minded South Indian culture. Because enna alaga irukom nama adha ethukurom. Nama romba, we are actually not parochial or in the bipartite அப்படிலாம் இல்லை. நம்ம என்ன அழகாக இருக்கும் நம்ம ஏற்றுக்கிறோம். அது கெடுதலும் இருக்குது, அதில் அது நல்ல நிறையா குணங்களும் இருக்குது. எல்லாம் ஏற்றுக்கிறோம்னா அதனால தான் நம்ம சங்கீதத்தில் நிறையா விஷயம் விட்டு போயிடுறது. பிகாஸ் புதுசாக நம்ம ஏதோ கொண்டு வரோம், அது இட் மே நாட் ஹாவ் கண்டென்ட் அண்ட் சப்ஸ்டன்ஸ். ஸோ சம்திங்ஸ் வி லூஸ் பிகாஸ் வி ஆர் அ வெரி ஓப்பன் மைண்டட் கல்ச்சர். That is why we speak in English, we will go and learn German, we will go and learn French. You try in the north to see if the interest to learn foreign language is so high. It's not. Because it is our culture that we revel in taking beautiful things into ourselves. So the violin is an assimilation. And then from the 1930s and 40s, it also developed as a solo instrument. Rajamanikam Pillai, Dwaram Venkateswamy Naidu, and of course after that the golden period of the violin, which is T.N. Krishnan sir, Lalgudi Jayaraman sir, M.S. Gopalakrishnan sir. In their hands and in their brilliant musical minds, this technique of the violin, of producing great music on the violin, grew by leaps and bounds. That's why I call it the golden period. Ella instruments, like every civilization, there is a curve of great ebbing and great peaks and highs. Peaks and lows. That is the nature of man. Correct? Ella sangeethathukku, ella instrumentukku highs and lows. Through time, if you see, certain instruments will come, they will rule for some time, then they will disappear, and they will come back again maybe. So it is that flow that I am talking about. So that period between the 50 to 2000, 1950 2000, I look at it as the golden period, when the violin really rose in prominence in terms of what it contributed to the musical system, right? In terms of how it extended the musical system. The violin just did not imitate and copy the voice. It gave the voice newer dimensions in the music. ஒரு ராஜரத்னம் போடு தோடி அண்ட் அவரோட நாதஸ்வரத்தில் இருக்கிற ஏஸ்தட்டிக்ஸ் பாசிபிலிட்டிஸ் எப்படி வோக்கல் ஈடியம்க்கு வந்ததோ, அதே மாதிரி ஒரு லால்குடி சாரோட எம்எஸ்ஜி சாரோட வாசிப்புனால அந்த வோக்கல் டைமென்ஷன் க்ரோ ஆச்சு. We get one M.D. Ramanathan, we get one S. Kalyanaraman, not due to the vocal tradition alone. It is because they are being nourished by the great music coming out of MSG sir and T.N. Krishnan sir and all that. Avale ottundruka. So it is not as if the voice is the only active mode here. The instrument also contributes back to the voice. If you hear music before 1950, we will see how the violin is such a fine instrument that it can produce dazzling speeds, which probably even the voice cannot. That is the guna of the instrument. And the violin, which is called, an acoustic principle is what is called resonance time and response time. As the response time, you can decrease it little to very infinitesimal levels. Infinitesimal na romba chinna level. 1 nanosecond, 1 picosecond. These are very infinitesimal temporal measurement, correct? Speed is what, if a fast or phrase vaasikanamna, and the instrument should be able to respond to that speed. Should be able to produce those notes discreetly. Go to Vaadhyatla possible illa. Veenalagudi, because of the construction of the instrument, it cannot play very fast speed. It is an open challenge. That no instrument can produce the kind of speed that, I can play on the violin. It's not my credit to me. It's a credit to how the instrument has, its response time is very, very fine. It's very, very small. Voice le adhe mari tha. The voice needs to respond and move at a fast pace for you to sing fast. அதனால தான் சில பேரால தான் ஃபாஸ்ட்டாக பாட முடியும். சில பேர் என்ன பண்ணாலும் ஃபாஸ்ட், ஃபுல் லைஃப் தே வில் ஸ்ட்ரகிள். பிகாஸ் அந்த இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்டுக்கு அந்த கேப்பபிலிட்டி இல்லை. எவ்வளோ பிரயத்னம் பண்ணாலும் ஃபாஸ்ட் வராது. சில பேருக்கு எவ்வளோ பிரயத்னம் பண்ணாலும் ஸ்லோ வராது. அதுவும் இருக்கு. ஐ ஹேவ் டு சே தட் ஆல்சோ. எம்டிஆர் பாடுற மாதிரி ஸ்லோவாக பாட முடியுமா நம்மளால? அந்த வாய்ஸ், அந்த இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்டுக்கு அந்த குணம் கொடுத்துருக்கார் பகவான். The voice itself is an instrument. Like I told, it's a reed instrument. If a nagaswaram that active the udra liya, it's a reed. It's a reed which has about 20 to 30 individual reeds. The voice, human voice, has 20,000 reeds. I'm not joking. This is a physiological fact. Now, how the mind and the breathing system produces a fixed frequency, making those 20,000 reeds vibrate at the same frequency. That is the magic of the voice. So the voice is so powerful in terms of its ability to generate musical sound. That's why all of us sound different. Radhaji will sing a sadja. M.S. Subbulakshmi also will sing a sadja. Brindama will sing a sadja. The fundamental frequency is the same. But why do they sound different? Because the characteristics of these 20,000 reeds that are being activated is always going to give you an infinite set of possibilities of overtones, partial sulva, harmonics, overtones. So anyway, so coming back to the violin is, it has about 320 parts. Okay? It seems to be very small and compact, but a good violin. The violin developed and reached a peak in the hands of 3 or 4 Italian craftsmen. Some names you might know. Antonio Stradivari, கேட்டிருக்கேலா? இங்கே வயலினிஸ்ட்லாம் இருக்கா, ஸோ அவளுக்கு தெரியும். Stradivari. If you have about $15 million, you can get a Stradivari. These are all made in the 1700s up to 1750. Guarneri del Gesù, again an Italian maker. They put their whole lives into making an instrument like this. They will make an instrument like this over 1 year. 1 year. போய் ஃபாரஸ்ட்டுக்கு போய் அந்த மரத்தை பார்த்து, அந்த மரத்தை தட்டி பார்த்து, இந்த மரம் தான் நம்மளுக்கு வேணும்னு சொல்லி, அது சின்னத்துலேருந்து பெருசாகிற வரை வெயிட் பண்ணி, அதுக்கப்புறம் அதுலேருந்து அந்த மரத்தை கரெக்டாக செக்ஷன்ஸு கட் பண்ணி, அப்புறம் அதை சீசன் பண்ணி, அது பெரிய ப்ராசஸ். இட்ஸ் a work of great Shraddha and great love. ஸோ அப்படி இந்த வயலினை கிரியேட் பண்ணுறது, இந்த ஷேப்பை கிரியேட் பண்ணுறது, இதோட அக்கூஸ்டிக் பிரின்சிபிள்ஸ், த்ரூ த எஃப் ஹோல், த்ரூ த திக்னஸ், த்ரூ எவ்ரி திங், சோ மெனி எலிமெண்ட்ஸ் இன் வயலின் கன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன். எல்லா இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்ஸுக்கும் அப்படி தான். ஒரு மிருதங்கம் பண்ணுறதோ, ஒரு நாகஸ்வரம் பண்ணுறதோ, இட்ஸ் சுலபமே இல்லை. இட்ஸ் a work of great love. ஸோ அந்த அளவுக்கு அந்த பர்ஃபெக்ஷன் கொண்டு வந்து இந்த வயலினுக்கு, இந்த சவுண்ட், இட்ஸ் ரெசொனன்ஸ், இட்ஸ் a very rich overtone, complex sound that you hear. That is why you are able to rustify it. அதனால தான் அதுக்கு $15 million விலை ஒரு Stradivarius violin. Because it resonates and produces an overtone fraction which is so rich. ஒரு பிளேன் போ போட்டா, ஒரு பிளேனா ஒரு ஸ்ட்ரிங் வாசிச்சாலே போறோம், அப்படியே ரூம் நிறைஞ்சு போயிடும். So this instrument gained that kind of a blessing from Saraswati. இப்படி நடக்கணும்னு. ஸோ அந்த இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட் evolve ஆகி then because the proof of the pudding is in the eating சொல்ற மாதிரி, over the past 400 years the violin has not undergone any major change in terms of its construction or in terms of the choice of wood or anything in the way it is made. That means that it reached a perfection. Even the veena has undergone lot of change, lot of change in terms of அந்த frets எப்படி பண்றது, length of the veena எல்லாமே நிறைய மாறியாச்சு. flute இப்போவும் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கா. There are people who are trying to improve the flute more and more, 7 holes, 8 holes, 9 holes, slanting holes, இந்த பக்கம் ஒரு தம்புக்கு ஒரு ஹோல். It is continuing to evolve. but இந்த வயலின்ல நிறைய ட்ரை பண்ணிருக்கா. சேத்துராமையா and சௌடையா 7 string violin வச்சு ட்ரை பண்ணா, ஏதோ கொஞ்சம் டிஃபரெண்டா இருந்தது, but it is a failure because it didn't continue, right? 5 string violins are there. Then L. Shankar, a violinist, very innovative violinist, he came up with a 5+5 string double neck violin. But that also only he plays. It's only for but the violin continues. This 4-string violin, which was perfect in the hands of the Italian masters, like I said, which owes its existence to the Ravanastram from the instrument that Ravana played. Correct? So adu in the formula namakku vandirukku. In terms of its sounding principles, it's important to know that the violin is even though we call it a bowed instrument, it is actually a plucked instrument. Do you know that? The bow, which activates the string, moves in a plane which is perpendicular to the string. The string is in tension between these 2 points. Correct? So when I displace it laterally, either this way or this way, it tends to go back to its original position. That's what creates the disturbance in the air around it. That's the sound wave. Okay? So when I do this, I am plucking the sound. The principle is one of plucking. Or a veena-liyo, or a guitar-liyo, sitar-liyo, plucking. Right? When this plucking happens 150 to 200 times a second, it is being plucked so fast that your ear is perceiving it as a continuous sound. Right? Nama veenela sound dies down. Correct? It goes to a high and it dies down. But in the violin, why does it sound continuous? Right? இப்போ நான் இப்போ ஒரு நோட் வாசிக்கிறேன். So what the bow does, the bow has about 50 to 70 or maybe more hairs from the tail of a horse. Correct? Now I put rosin ஒன்று எல்லாரும் போடுறது பார்த்துருப்பீங்களே கச்சேரிக்கு முன்னாடி இப்படி போடுவா. Correct? I introduce a powder that increases the friction between the bow hair and the string. Right? So when I am activating my bow, it is gripping the string with friction. But immediately the string tends to go back to its position. So it pulls it. When I produce this, down bow sulvaduk. This is called a down bow because I am going down with the bow. It plucks the string goes back to its original position, it plucks it again because the friction is continuous. So it's a constant fight between the hair pulling the string and the string resisting and wanting to go back. Right? This is what, and since this happens 100-150 times a second, depending upon how good your bowing is and how smooth your bowing is, you perceive it as a continuous sound. It's an illusion for the ear. Correct? எல்லாமே illusion தான், அது நமக்கு தெரியும். இது ஒரு add that illusion to your unending lists. So I will play something where you can perceive this continuity, which is probably not there in any other instrument, because even the flute is limited by the length of the breath. Correct? There are some wind instruments where they do circular breathing, where as they exhale, they inhale. In the oboe, clarinet, trumpet எல்லாம் பண்ணலாம். பட் நம்ம புல்லாங்குழல்ல பண்ண முடியாது. நிறைய பேர் ட்ரை பண்ணியிருக்கா. நாதஸ்வரத்தில் பண்ண முடியாது. Every other instrument has a limitation of how long a note can sustain. In the veena and in the sitar, etc., it is very clear. Once you pluck the sound comes out and it dies down. There is no continuous sound, right? But because the requirement of Indian classical music is one of continuous sound, the violin is able to realize that and manifest that requirement very clearly. Say. So in the Subhapanturali Bhaskara, so even my fast phrase is a continuity. So in the continuous kind of sound which the violin can produce, no other instrument can produce. Only a bowed instrument can produce it. So even though I am playing sangadis and swaras, if you see the sound is continuous. And depending upon the kind of friction and pressure that I put on the violin, when I bow, I produce different tones and different dynamics, volume and tone. Like so. Because I'm just caressing the string, right? On a veena you cannot caress the string; it will not sound. Na onnume kore solla. Na fact eppadi na observe pandreno na solren. Nagaswaram you cannot produce small sound. Soft sound you cannot produce because the principle of acoustic principle, the note will split. Try blowing soft into a Nagaswaram, no sound will come. Because the reed, you have to force the sound through the reed. That is the operating principle, right? So in the continuous sound that I produce and the tonal colors that I produce, even a voice cannot do this. Because the voice is so complex and it is very difficult. If Saraswati Ambal sings, it will be possible. Because you're talking about about being able to control the vibrations of 20,000 reeds, right? So even in fast phrases, the continuity of sound is something that is so magnificent about the violin. The reason why, like when I mentioned natural selection, there's a logic behind it. You may not realize the logic, why the violin became the primary instrument in Indian classical music. But of course, it had to develop the technique for that over the period of 100 years. And all credit and all honor to the pioneers who developed this. நம்ம இப்படி வாசிக்கிறோம் இன்னைக்குனா அது அவா கொடுத்த blessings தான். அவா பண்ண efforts. We stand on their shoulders. Right? So, Bilari vasikkalama konjam. In an alapana or in a kriti, this continuous sound is what regales you. I remember time when I used to go to kacheris to listen to only the violin. And then when I used to accompaniment, MSG sir vasikirna, and yaru paadra enakku kavale illa. MSG sir violin kekka pova. And na mattum illa. Nariya per engoda nariya and gumbal undu. So ava violin dhaan kekka pora. Paatu yaru vanna irukala. So to that extent it came to a point where the vocalist became redundant. Redundant in a good way, in sense. But what I'm saying is that the violin started ruling. Today, even if you ask of that generation of people, of great musicians like T.R. Subramaniam, Nedunuri Krishnamurthy, if you ask them to name one of the greatest musicians, they will say Lalgudi Jairam. They will not mention a vocalist. Because what he did on the violin surpassed what every vocalist had done. Ariyakudi up to, the 2000s. How he amassed, ava ellam pandratha avar oru vaadhiyathila pannittar. Appadi sollam. In fact, mridangathila pandrathe avar vaadhiyathila pannittar. So avale redundant akittar. Whether it be korappu or korvai or purtham or whatever. All aspects of rhythm also he was able to transpose onto the violin. That is the potential of the instrument. Adukku sollu. MSG எல்லாம் வாஸ்சா அந்த மாதிரி ஸ்பீடு யாராலையும் பாட முடியாது. கல்யாண் ராமன் ஸ்பீட், கல்யாண் ராமன், one of the greatest practitioners of the Tritakala, that is the highest speeds. அவர் பாடின மாதிரி ஸ்பீட்ஸ் யாருமே பாடினதில்லை. இப்போ அவருக்கே MSG தான் இன்ஸ்பிரேஷன். அவர் சொல்லியிருக்கார். தட் இஸ் MSG மாதிரி அந்த கிளாரிட்டி, அந்த பர்ஃபெக்ஷன் நம்மளால வாய்ஸில் கொண்டு வர முடியுமா? So the violin starts setting the standards. Initially it was the vocal that set the standard. A time came when the violin starts setting the standards. The aesthetics of the violin starts determining the aesthetics of the vocal tradition. Urka Vishwa sir ஏதோ ஒரு கச்சேரிக்கு, I will not take the name, ஒரு வோக்கல் கச்சேரிக்கு போனார் யூஎஸ்ல இருக்கும்போது. ஸோ நான் போக முடியல. விஸ்வ சார் மீன்ஸ் டி விஸ்வநாதன். ஸோ வந்தப்புறம் கேட்டேன், சார் எப்படி இருந்து கச்சேரி? அவர் குரு வயலின் எப்படி வாசிக்கிறாரோ அப்படி பாடினான்னு சொன்னார். So this was Lalgudi sir's disciple, one of the disciples, which means that the whole singing style had been so influenced by the instrumental side. Even today, if you listen to some of the disciples of Lalgudi sir, violin வாசிக்கிற மாதிரி இருக்கும் பாட்டு. கமகாஸ்லேருந்து அனுஸ்வரத்துலேருந்து கிருத்திஸ்லேருந்து சங்கதிஸ்லேருந்து வாய்ஸ் கொடுக்குற விதத்துலேருந்து த்ரோ ஆஃப் த வாய்ஸ், த ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் ஆஃப் த வாய்ஸ் எல்லாமே வயலின் மாதிரி தான் இருக்கும். டு தட் எக்ஸ்டென்ட் இட் பிகேம் அ பவர்ஃபுல் ஃபோர்ஸ். அதுக்கு சொல்கிறேன். பாட்டு பாடுறவர் இந்த ரிஷபம் வாசிக்க முடியுமா, பாட முடியுமா? எட்டவே எட்டாது. 99% of the singers, they don't sing below panchama at all. So the violin oda scope naala the 3 octave, 4 octave, 5 octave range, right? எனக்கு because of the instrument I can challenge anybody to sing a sa as perfect as this. Because it is outside my realm, I can control it. Right? So, Shruti Shuddham வந்து violin மாதிரி ஒரு இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்லேயும் வராது. அந்த பஞ்சமம் விழற ஒரு பர்ஃபெக்ஷன் சாதனை பண்ணணும். எம்எஸ்சி அந்த பஞ்சமம் பிடிப்பார், அதுக்கு மேல ஒரு பஞ்சமமே இல்லை. பட் ஆஃப்கோர்ஸ் இது சுதி சுத்தம் ரசிக்கிற தன்மை உங்களுக்கு இருக்கணும். அட நீங்க சொல்ற போர் அடிக்கும்னு சொல்லுவேன். ரைட்? இஃப் ஐ பிளே, there is a recording of MSG that I have heard 10,000 times minimum of his Mohanam. Right? So because every time he catches that sa and pa, it is like the most beautiful thing on earth. Right? But அந்த பஞ்சமம் சஜ்ஜம் காந்தார ரிஷபம் எல்லாம் ரசிக்கக்கூடிய தன்மையும் இருக்கணுமே. இப்போ இந்த பா ஓபன் ஸ்ட்ரிங்கும், the open string is exposed. You cannot do anything with it. Whereas if I play the pa on, I can produce tones, I can produce vibrato, I can do so many things with it. So here is also the violin scores over the voice, because there is the means by which you will sing a pa is given. Here I can play that pa on this. நாலு தந்திலே அதே பா வாசிக்கலாம். All of them the sound will be different. And because of the extreme amount of potential of the bow is the voice of the violin. நம்ம எப்படி வாய்ஸால நம்ம phrasing, tonality, dynamics produce பண்றோமோ அதே மாதிரி the control of the bow is what allows me to do that. If I play and the da da ga pa da da, and the emphasis தான் பிலஹரி. இப்போ நான் ga pa da da பாடினா அது பிலஹரி இல்லை. பிலஹரி தான் ஒரு மாதிரி okay bilahari, not exceptional bilahari. So the tonal colors and the dynamic modulation that our music requires is so amazing, right? So that a violin can produce. I can also play a very tender, very beautiful tonal color, different. I see. The continuity of that phrase with the anuswaras. The range of gamakas and anuswaras and tonalities that I can produce. wife can sing very fast. She is very virtuosic singer. Deepika is there. She can also sing very virtuosically. But in the speed, avalaala அடுத்த ஜென்மத்திலயும் பாட முடியாது. Maybe la chance illa. அது குணம் வந்து இந்த இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்டோட, because its response time is so small, like, right? Right? அந்த ரெஸ்பான்ஸ் டைம் நான் ஃபிங்கர்ஸ்ல டெவலப் பண்ணணும், ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணணும். சும்மா வயலின் ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ண முடியும்னா you have to develop the speed is a matter of response time of the brain to think of that speed and to have that clarity in the perception of those notes, in the perception of the idea, and the idea, because it is manodharma, right? And the perception of the idea la and the response, small response time, and fingers la and the response time, right hand la response time ellame develop. Adukapram the violin will deliver. Idellam a veena artist also can have all these elements, but the instrument will not be able to deliver. It's a limitation, right? Like I said, so that is why probably the luckiest of musicians get the violin chosen for them. That is my belief. You don't choose the instrument chooses you, Sulva. என்னோட violin teacher சொல்வா, don't think you have chosen this instrument, the instrument has chosen you. So அந்த விதத்துல அந்த வயலினோட குணம் தான். This sound of this is called a harmonic, and the harmonic வந்து is a perfect acoustic principle, right? Now that beautiful ringing open sound of the sa is an acoustic possibility. So all these acoustic possibilities are realized on the violin very beautifully because of the perfection of the construction. You also need a good instrument. Chela instrumentally in the sa apdi harmonic vaasya adu vera edo satham varum. The idea of an instrument in Carnatic music, it has to be able to capture the phrasing of sahitya, right? அப்பதானே நம்ம ஒரு கிருதி பாடினா கிருதி மாதிரி இருக்கணும் இல்லையா? Then only is it suitable for Carnatic music. If it is not able to capture the phrasing and the emphasis and the structure of sahitya, the kriti cannot be conveyed. So, and the capturing of the sahitya is also a very complex process in terms of what goes into emphasis, right? Ipo inna paadu veena pustaka darini ma sraye vegava ahini vanim ஆஸ்ரயே. இது வேகவாகினியில் இட்ஸ் குவைட் இந்த சௌக்க கால கிருத்தியில் அந்த கமகாஸ் ஆஃப் வேகவாகினி வீணா புஸ்தக தாரிணி மாஸ்ரயே வேக வாகினி வாணீம் ஆஸ்ரயே. பாடுறச்ச இப்படி பாடினா தான் ஒரு அளவுக்கு அந்த கமகாஸோட ரிச்னஸ், அந்த மெலடிக்கு, அந்த வார்த்தைகளுக்கு வீணா புஸ்தக தாரிணி ஆஸ்ரேஜ் பாடுனா அந்த ஃபீல் ஆஃப் த சாகித்யா எல்லாமே நம்ம கன்வே பண்ணாதான் அது சக்சஸ்ஃபுல் கன்வே, ரைட்? So on the proper bow choreography solva, the violin, I have to either subconsciously or consciously I have to choreograph the phrasing with the bow. Like I said, the emphasis, the points at which I change my bow direction, all of it is what I mean by choreography. Ipo. So, அந்த எம்பசிஸ் அந்த அழுத்தம் இருந்தால் தான் அது வீணம். வீ பாடினா அது நம்ம சங்கீதம் மாதிரி இருக்காது. ரைட். ஸோ அந்த சாகித்யத்தோட பாவத்தை நம்ம கேப்சர் பண்ண முடியணும். ரைட். பாசி. For this or even for a faster composition, அது தாத்வ மெருக தரமா படதாத்வ மெருக அந்த punches and the gaps and the emphasis எல்லாம் capture பண்ணாதான் if I how will you like it if I sing தாத்வ மெருக தரமா படதாத்வ மெருக தரமா பாட்டு மாதிரி இருக்காது. டெஃபினெட்லி தியாகராஜா கிருதி மாதிரி இல்லை. தாத்வ மெருக தரமா தரமா படதாத்வ மெருக தரமா படதாத்வ மெருக இந்த பாட்டோட ஏஸ்தெட்டிக்கை துவாரம் வெங்கடசாமி பாடி துவாரம் வெங்கடசாமி நாயுடு வாசிதான் இந்த ஏஸ்தெட்டிக்ஸ் எப்படி வந்திருக்கு. தியாகராஜா டெஃபினட்டா எப்படி பாடல. It was rendered in an instrumental way, the Sahitya, and that became the standard. Right? Tatvamasi anuvadhya. It will definitely paadi irukka maatara. But the Sahitya or the spirit, you have to be able to get. Correct? So what I am using a bow stroke here, it is called a broken martele. I cannot play. Adum vasikka mudiyum. Adum varadu. That is what causes delight. Ranjakatvam in the chinna vishayangal which you are not aware of is what causes you to like something. Right? It is not the apparent things which cause delight. It is the hidden things which cause delight. Everything in life. So when I use the bow, அப்படிதான் பண்ணணும். I cannot do. So the complexity of production is also very high. Like I said, the violin bow is the voice, and because of the extreme sophistication of the bow and all kinds of sounds that it can produce is amazing. For example, I can share some strokes of the bow which produce different kinds of sounds. For example, this is basically what is called legato. In Italian terms, a continuous, even sounding. Right? I make the note blossom and project by giving it vibrato. Vibrato na left hand ala a slight. I can play plain note. It won't project so well. But if I I can project the sa better. Then there is the idea of the détaché. Détaché is putting Kalpana Swara and Chitta Swaram and all. Like. Now this is called a detached stroke. Right? So that I have to produce the articulation of the swaras. Right? That is done by this stroke. Then there is a stroke called the martele, which is I grip the string and then I release it. It's a. So this gives me a punch. Right? Nammalukku punch venume. Is a tarama illiya. Tarra. There is an emphasis and punch there. Right? So on the emphasis, I have to be able to produce Sahitya Bhavana. Idillanda Sahitya Bhava. Arthamo namak puriyade. Sahitya Bhavala. What we relish at Sahitya is all these things. Right? So I have to. Right? It still has to sound musical and sweet. Then there is the idea of the staccato. Staccato is what we use to play Tanam. Ipo, idha ragam solungo? Huh? Purvi Kalyani. Basi. So when I do, this is called staccato. It's a broken sound. At the same time, it is not distinct sound. Right? So this for Tanam, this is very good. So I'm using this staccato. Right? I'm using staccato, I'm using the martele, ella use pandren. I'm ta and the force. Right? So I'm using a combination of, like how a vocalist will use the voice to create these emphasis, dynamics and punctuations. Tanam is about punctuation. That you have to give that tat, 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 tat. Full stops, commas you have to give. Right? And the grouping of jatis, takata, takita, takita, takita. Eppadi mridangathila emphasis kuduthu jati pandralo. Taka, takita, taka, takita. Vasi? Right? Takita, takita, taka, takita, taka, takita. In the sound enala kondara mudijadha and the tanam alaga irukum. So அந்த தானத்துல இருக்கிற நான் யூஸ் பண்ற அந்த ஸ்டெக்காட்டோ, ரைட்? அதுக்கு வேண்டி தானத்துல ஃபுல்லா அப்படி கத்தி 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 பஞ்ச் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கேன். You'd also have continuous phrases. the stroke of the staccato. Then there is a stroke of what is called bouncing the bow on the string, which is called spiccato. Ipo, any other raga suggest? Reading always spiccato work hard. Where are the Hindolam. Now I am bouncing my bow, right? Like that produces a different kind of a sound. Right? To get it to bounce is not easy. Okay? First, when you try to bounce it, it is all over the way. Because you are using this lateral tension of the string for it to bounce off the string. It's like bouncing a basketball, right? Right? So, when I am playing Kalpana Swaram or something, I will use this. Varnathla kudi na nariya use பண்ணுவேன். இந்த மாதிரி spiccato. உங்களுக்கு தெரியாது. But it will create a delight. You know? தான வர்ணம்னு என்ன சொல்றா? It has that punctuation and என்ன சொல்றது அந்த ஒரு திக்கு kind of feel. You know? That is what this does. Then when there is the idea of the tremolo. Tremolo is very fast, like இது வாசி தான் எல்லாரையும் மயக்கிறா. இப்போ ஒரு வீடியோ வந்துட்டு இருக்கு, ஒரு சின்ன பொண்ணு ஆபேரி வாசிட்டு இருக்கா, கேட்டேடா? I have received at least 100 forwards from 100 different people. Oh, this is Saraswati herself playing. Because it is very appealing. ரொம்ப நல்லா வாசிக்கிறா, அப்படி சரஸ்வதி அவதாரம்லாம் சில பேர் எழுதி அனுப்புறா. That's because it's very very catchy, gimmicky it is. இப்போ நான் இப்போ இப்படி வாசிச்சா கை தட்டு விடும். ஷுவர், நானே நிறைய வாட்டி கச்சேரி கொஞ்சம் அப்படி ஸ்லோ டவுன் ஆனா இப்படி வாசிக்கிறது. Because it will pick up audience வந்து இதெல்லாம் gimmicks. But gimmicks are also part of the music. Because it's a possibility of the instrument. ரொம்ப கஷ்டம் ஒன்றும் இல்லை. It's very easy. But then it's a possibility. Correct? Then between all these strokes, there are variations which we will not go into. But இதெல்லாம் சேர்ந்து இந்த வயலினோட sounding, you know, it increases that palette சொல்வா இல்லையா, like a painter has so many colors available on his palette to produce great pictures. அதே மாதிரி the violin and the bow together, when we say violin it means both only, provides a palette which can produce all this. Okay, so அதனால தான் these are the Vaadhya aspects, right? When we talk about Vaadhya aspects, these are the elements of the instrument and its speciality and its versatility that allows you to do this. The ability to produce gamakas. Gamakas நம்ம ஈஸியாக சொல்லிவிடுறோம், 16 types of gamakas, but there are infinite types of gamakas. Every musician will know. ஒரு தேவகாந்தரியோ, ஒரு தோடியோ, ஒரு சாமாவோ, எனி ராகா எடுத்தாலும் அந்தந்த ராகத்துக்கு அந்த கமகத்தோட ஒரு பிராதானியம், அதோட ஒரு உழைப்பு இருக்கே, அது ரொம்ப, அதனால தான் இன்னும் பாடிட்டு இருக்கோம். கச்சேரி இல்லாட்டாலும் பாடுறோம். ஏன்னா அந்த ராகத்தில் இருக்கிற ஆகர்ஷணம். So beautiful those gamakas are. So அந்த gamakas எல்லாம் on a violin become very that is, you can it's very palpable, the joy that you can produce a gamaka on the voice, on the instrument, because all instruments cannot bring out that. Gamakas and anuswaras, I mentioned both of them together because they are like partners. pagari ri adula gamaka types solla pona there is what is called the jaru or the ullasita, there is the kampita, right, and the anuswara of it's not pagari, it's dapa. Adu vedame ipuna adu okay, is it excellent? No, that is excellent, right? Continuous gamakas, the jarus, like try to do this on the veena or the saxophone, you will not be able to. I can produce the speed and the vivaciousness of Dujavanti also. Dujavanti is not about all the time. It is about great amount of color, like sitar, like trang dang trang dang trang dang dang trang dang. If you can hear the sitar in that aesthetic, so this is a combination of both. I do a plucking of the fingers of the left hand. That is part of the sound that you're hearing. That is what gives you the bite. Bite na theriyuma? Or sangadil or chak or sound. Yeah, adu bite. Like so I have to grip the string. It's not unless. This is the sitar aesthetics. This is how sarangi will play. Sarangi, like the continuous sound. Continuous sound and all these punctuations, that's what makes a good sounding Dujavanti, correct? Ella dimensions mandalam and the raga thoda purnatvanam adeyala. The whole picture of the raga comes because of all these aesthetics and a sense of aesthetics that has been developed over hundreds and hundreds of years. Namala discover pannala in the aesthetics, correct? Yaro paadna nama guru solli kudta ava எதையோ கட்டு இன்ஸ்பயர் ஆனா அப்படி போற ஒரு சீரீஸ் ஆஃப் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்சஸ் தான், ரைட்? The same thing, especially in Hindustani, this sense of gamakas and continuity of sound, even though the violin is, I would say, not such a well developed instrument in Hindustani, because it's also the politics of instruments, wherever there is a performative art, there is politics. So the violin, which could have taken off in a big way as it took off in the south, correct? It didn't happen because the sarod and the sitar took off. The 20th century is when the sarod and sitar started ruling Hindustani music to the cost that even the sarangi was diminished. This is the politics of instruments. But still, I believe that the instrument that best realizes the vocal aesthetics in Hindustani is also the violin, because it has all these a vast palette of Hindustani ragam. Solungo askilama solungo edavadhu malko seri paddeep sonna yeah. ஸோ ஹிந்துஸ்தானியில் நம்ம நிறைய சொல்லுவோம், கர்நாடிக்கில் தான் நிறைய கமகம் இருக்குன்னு. பட் ஹிந்துஸ்தானியில் த கமகாஸ் ஆர் லெஸ் வெரைட்டிஸ், பட் த அனுஸ்வரம்ஸ் ஆர் வெரி வெரி ரிச். இப்போ நான் இப்போ காரிசா இஸ் நாட் காரிசா, இல்லை காரிசா ரிகசா காரிசா, அப்பதான் அந்த சாகா சாகா சாதா நீனி மகா சாகா. So if I play, it is not Pardeep. I have to do it in the same string. Sa ma ma ga. Madani ba madama madama madani pa da ma pa ma. Actually, that's what I have to play. Pani Pratimadima pa 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 pani it is not punny. It's and the sa to ga போற and the tension of that நம்ம ஜாரு சொல்லிடலாம், but it has to have tension. It is almost like the pulling of a string. If I play ordinarily, it will be that is normal. Okay, this is exceptional. I am very clear about it because I am trying to get the sound of the pulling string. The violin allows me to do that. Now this sa, if you close your eyes, it is the sound of a pulled string. And the pulled string oda aesthetics tha indhu. Konja adu deep, nalla kaadu venam. But you can develop it. Like is not Allah. I've never played Paddeep on the violin. This is the first time I'm playing. But the music is so giving and so generous, right? And my gurus have taught me the violin so beautifully. The credit is to them. Because the once you are intimate with the way your instrument produces sound, in great detail, anything you give me, I'll play. That is the power of Indian classical music. Enna kuduthalum paada mudiyum, enna kuduthalum vasikka mudiyum. Tell me any cinema song, any Beyonce song, I'll play it on the violin. You know? Dappangut vasikkalam, Lata Mangeshkar paattu vasikkalam. Because that is the potential of the instrument. It can produce anything. Right? But indiki venda nenikire, aanalum vasikkalam. If you are game for it, I can play anything. Right? If I take ipo பாட்டு கேட்டிருக்கீங்களா? கிட்டத்தட்ட லதா மாதிரியே இருக்கா? இப்போ இந்த ஓ அந்த ஓ வாசிக்கிறதுக்கே கொஞ்சம் உழைக்கணும். Song. Full of anuswarams and expression. The expressive power of the song is what works. Right? When Lata sings or when Yeshudas sings or SPB sir sings, it is the expression that works. Ultimately, the joy is brought about by the expression. So whether the instrument can bring out that expression, the expressive potential of the instrument, right? It was oh sajana barkha baharai, and the adile irukra or swell and the and the part-uga connection, like akhiyon mein pyar lai, like very delicate. Sajana. அதெல்லாம் கொண்டதா தான் அந்த இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட்ல அந்த பாட்டு கேட்கும் உங்களுக்கு. The idea of making the violin sing is exactly that. You have to work at the soundscape of the song and be able to translate that onto instrument. That is what success is. Whether it be a kriti or a film song or anything, that is what it is. We will wind up with something. So like I said, the instrument has also developed and contributed to the entire musical idiom its own aesthetics. So எல்லாருமே அந்த அனுஸ்வரம் வாசி அது தப்பு. Because there is only chinna nishadam in our Kannada, right? Allah, sorry. Ama. Right? You have to do that. Okay? These are all sangatis of the violin. First dwaram vascha idella. நின்னுவினா நாமதெந்தோ பாடணும்னா பாடினாலும் இப்படி தான் பாடணும். அல்ட்டா ஜனங்களுக்கு பிடிக்காது. Because the violin has redefined the version of the song itself. Right? There are so many kritis. ஒரு ரகுவம்ச சுதாம்புதி சந்திர. அதே மாதிரி for example the way MSG redefined மனவியாள கிஞ்சரா that very dazzling speed, for example. Sagari mapani sari pani sagari mapani sagari mapani sagari magari sari mama. Adha sangam. Now idu vande I have to play in much faster. And the perfection, of course MSG sir mari varadu. But we have to try to reach that. The speed sonella, the brilliant speed. No other instrument can produce this speed. Because again, it comes back to how fine the response is of the instrument. Right? இப்படி நிறைய பாட்டு நீங்க யோசிச்சாலே உங்களுக்கு தெரியும். ஈவன் இப்போ தெல்லிசி ராமச்சிந்தன, the punctuation of this is very instrumental. இது again Dwaram da. Dwaramku we have not given enough credit. You know, the way he redefined, which was taken over later by Lalgudi sir and by MSG sir. Lalgudi sir transposed the virtuosic brilliance of T.N. Rajaratnam Pillai on the violin. எல்லாம் இப்படி borrowing-ஆ தான் process நடக்கிறது. So if you look at Lalgudi sir's Anuswarams and his Sangadis, the brilliance of that, it is coming from the Nadaswaram. You know, இதை ராகம் சொல்லுங்க. லால்குடி சாரோட ரொம்ப ஃபேவரட். Yeah, Charukesh. So that இப்போ this gamaka of sari is actually sa-sa-da vaskiraravar. It's a Nadaswaram Anuswara. நாதஸ்வரத்தில் இந்த பொடி சங்கதி ரொம்ப ஸோ அதெல்லாம் லால்குடி சார் அடாப்ட் பண்ணார். அதுக்கப்புறம் அது வாய்ஸ்க்கு போயிடுது. இந்த கண்ணமூடி கேட்டா நிறைய லால்குடி சாரோட ராகாலாப்னா, the styling of it, the phrasing of it is just like Nadaswaram. இப்போ தத்தத்த பப்ப பபப பப பபப பப பபப எல்லாம் அது நாதஸ்வரமாக தான். அது வயலின்ல கொண்டு வந்தார். அதுக்கப்புறம் பாடுற வேற அப்படி பாடுற. வாசி. இப்போ very Nadaswaram. Yeah, you know. This is the MS. Brought in Hindustani aesthetic to it. The plains, the Lalgudi Sarodi, you will never hear this. Like so, because the violin affords, we will not go into styles. Violin affords all kind of interpretations. You know, you will not be able to see this wide variety of style in any other instrument. Veenala. Can you recognize, other than the sound, ஒரு வீணை வாசிப்பு கேட்ட உடனே இதுதான் ஒரு ஆர்டினரி லேமேன் cannot recognize. Whereas violin இது TNK மாமா தெரியும், TNK சார், TN கிருஷ்ணன் தெரியும், இது சந்திரசேகரன் சார் தெரியும். Because the violin affords, if you want the sky, you will get the sky. It is so infinite in its ability to produce sound. அதுக்கு ஒரு அந்த விஷயத்தில் சொல்கிறேன். Every single, I can recognize 100 styles in violin playing in first 2 seconds of listening to it. Because that is the individuality and originality that the instrument provides you. It is not the guna of the artist alone. The instrument gives you that potential, has that potential. 2-3 more points are important, but we will, I want to take any questions if Chandrasekhara sir oda touch, you know, ஒரு அந்த மூர்ச்சனாவோட touches இருக்கும், you know, which is very difficult, you know, except for Rahul, I have not heard anybody else play that kind. Very difficult to imitate. So personal it becomes. The violin affords you to be so individual and so original. ஒரு என்ன வாசிக்கலாம், ஒரே ஒரு ராகம் வாசிச்சு we will conclude, and then if you have any questions இருக்கலாம், ஒரே ஒன்று வாசிச்சு நாங்கள் 3 நேரமாக இதாக வாசிக்கலாம். என்ன வாசிக்கலாம் சொல்லு. MSG சார்லாம் வயலினில் சுந்து பருவி வாசிச்சா அப்படியே இருக்கும். I can paint on the violin like a very good painter paints with the brush. I see. This is sitar sangari. Play, you also play. Now this Sagamma Pada Swaram solren. Because of my bow strokes, you know, I can play it in Vaskalam. This is called spiccato near the bow, near the frog. It produces a very harsh sound, but still beautiful. So I can produce. At the end of a concert, a vocalist cannot produce this sa because you're tired, right? பாடவருக்கு தெரியும் கச்சேரியில் பாட்டுக்கு முடிப்பில் கோர்வையெல்லாம் போட்டு ஒரு வழியாக பண்ணி அந்த அந்த லாஸ்ட் சா ஆல்வேஸ் தடுமாறும். It will shake. But the violin allows me to produce the best sa, right? Thank you so much.
Lord Namaskaram. I thank Sriram Parasuram for giving us a deep insight into the unique aspects of violin. In fact, he has quoted so many Italian words which may remember or may not remember for days. And I also thank his students.
Sri Lakshmi and Bhuvan.
Bhuvan.
They are my students. Inik, I am very sorry. We had planned to play a lot of other things. But the way flow goes, I have to take it that way. So next time we will play a little bit more with them. Yeah. Thank you all. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om.